Hello, my name is Katie Slayton, and I'm going to be creating an analogy on how neurons communicate through using my German Shepherd Riley. First, the nervous system is comprised of two systems. The central, which consists of the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral, which are all the nerves in the body. The systems work together to transmit information. Some cells like these don't transmit information, but are a part of the nervous system called glial cells. They help the central system and other functions like myelinating. Now here is my neuron, Riley. This type of cell transmits information for the nervous system. Riley now is in resting potential, meaning he is not excited or inhibited. In resting potential, he is in a negative state inside, so he does things like watching TV, texting friends, eating some snacks, reading Harry Potter, and laying down. Now during this time, while Riley is building up his action potential of seeing his buddy Colt, I am just going to talk about what is happening in his membrane right now by throwing a frisbee. Our nerve cells have membranes with selective permeability, meaning some ions can pass through easily with passive transport, and some need energy with active transport. The membranes are what makes the electrical charge, making the resting membrane potential at negative 70 millivolts, which means the inside is more negative than the outside. In rest, potassium flows into the cell because of electrical gradient, and it flows out due to concentration gradient. Sodium is more concentration outside the cell. The sodium-potassium pump is lined on the axon and is pumping 2 potassium in the cell and 3 sodium out of the cell, causing this gradient. When excitatory signals are sent through the axon, it opens up the sodium channels and it causes a decrease in polarization, called depolarization. When he is in depolarization and bringing millivolts to zero, his membrane is in the excitatory postsynaptic potential. Before it reaches depolarization, it goes through a threshold of excitation at negative 55 millivolts. On this car ride, Riley is in the threshold potential because he knows the 5-minute route we take to get to our grandma's house. At this time, I can stimulate the all or none law. I can turn around and go back home, or I can keep going to grandma's house. This is known as the all or none law, where if the stimulus, if it took 5-minute drive to see him, or seeing Colt immediately, no matter what, when he sees Colt, he will hit the action potential with his response. Alright, so once we finally arrive at grandma's and open the door, Riley is about 40 millivolts, and he is in the action potential, where the electrical impulse is going down the axon. When dogs see each other, immediately they sniff each other's butt, where I will use this analogy to describe how neurotransmitters are released. The axon terminals, or the snout of the dog, is where the presynaptic, and the dendrites of the second neuron, or his butt, is the postsynaptic. The gap between his snout and butt is called the synaptic cleft. Now when dogs sniff each other's butts, they are actually releasing chemicals from glands in the rear end that tell the dog sniffing their gender, diet, and their emotions, because a dog's sense of smell is superior over ours. But back to our discussion of neurons. When Riley hits his action potential and sends that signal down to the axon terminals and open calcium gates to allow vesicles of neurotransmitters into the synapse. My little drawing on the side is a showing of a close-up of Riley sniffing the chemicals coming from Colt's butt. This is neurotransmitters being released into the synaptic cleft and being bound to the postsynaptic receptors. Now after their first interaction of dogs meeting together, they are playing in repolarization. Going back home in the car is him in this period called the refractory period. He is also having increased polarization called hyperpolarization, and is going back into resting potential at negative 70 millivolts. Riley's membrane is in inhibitory postsynaptic potential, meaning the membrane potential is more negative. When the next trip to Grandma's house comes around again, it will start this process all over, but for now he will be in his resting potential.